The day Empress Seralyth surrendered her daughter to a human began with music powerful enough to shake dust from the oldest statues in the celestial palace. Thousands of nobles filled the Hall of Orbits beneath a transparent dome through which the capital's 3 moons drifted like pale lanterns. Holographic banners moved in slow waves above the crowd, displaying the silver crest of the Valorian Empire, while ceremonial drones scattered fragments of artificial starlight over the polished black floor. At the center of it all stood Adrian Vale, holding a diagnostic wrench and wondering how a simple repair job had somehow placed him within 10 steps of the most powerful woman in the galaxy. He had arrived that morning to fix a damaged diplomatic shuttle. The palace engineer had assured him that the work would take 20 minutes. That had been 3 hours ago, before a security automaton mistook Adrian's tool case for an explosive device, scanned his lunch twice, and confiscated a spoon for possessing an aggressive curve. Adrian had only entered the throne hall because a floating service drone had given him the wrong directions. He was considering whether it would be safer to crawl backward toward the exit when the great doors sealed behind him. The music stopped. Empress Seralyth rose from her throne. She looked almost human, though her long, elegant ears extended through her golden hair and angled slightly backward when she was displeased. At that moment, they were perfectly still. Her pale face revealed nothing as she descended the steps carrying a young girl in her arms. The princess could not have been more than 5 years old. She wore a white ceremonial coat woven with tiny moving constellations. Her long ears were smaller than her mother's, her eyes bright and curious. Instead of looking at the generals, ambassadors, and noble families who bowed before her, she stared directly at Adrian. Then she pointed. That one. A murmur passed through the hall. Adrian glanced behind him. There was no one there except a cleaning robot polishing the same square of floor with suspicious dedication. The Empress stopped before him. "Adrian Vale of Earth," she said. He tightened his grip on the wrench. "Yes, Your Radiance. You repaired my daughter's shuttle. I replaced a coolant valve. You entered a burning engine chamber to do so. The door locked behind me." For the first time, something almost like amusement flickered in Seralyth's eyes. The princess leaned out of her mother's arms and reached for him. Adrian froze. He had handled unstable fusion cells with less fear. Seralyth placed the child in his arms. The hall erupted. Several nobles shouted at once. A general dropped his ceremonial blade. Somewhere in the crowd, an elderly minister made a sound like a kettle reaching dangerous pressure. Adrian stared at the Empress. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding." "There has not. This is your daughter. I am aware. She is also the imperial heir. I am aware of that as well." The little girl touched Adrian's face with both hands, studying him with grave interest. Then she rested her head against his chest as though the matter had already been settled. Seralyth turned to the assembled court. "From this moment forward, Princess Elara will leave the capital under the protection and guardianship of Adrian Vale." The silence that followed seemed large enough to swallow the palace. Lord Varen, commander of the Imperial Guard, stepped forward. "Majesty, this human has no title, no military rank, and no verified knowledge of royal education." Adrian raised one hand. "In fairness, I barely understand royal furniture." A few younger officers failed to hide their laughter. Varen's expression hardened. "This is not amusing." "I agree," Adrian said. "Your chairs look expensive." Seralyth did not explain herself. She simply removed a thin crystal pendant from her neck and placed it around Elara's. Symbols glowed inside it, shifting too quickly for Adrian to read. "When the time comes," the Empress whispered, "it will show you where to go." Adrian lowered his voice. "When what time comes?" Seralyth looked toward the distant stars beyond the dome. "The time when everyone believes the war cannot be stopped." Before he could ask another question, alarms screamed through the palace. The transparent dome darkened as defense systems activated. Red tactical symbols appeared above the city. Far beyond the moons, 3 unidentified vessels emerged from folded space, their hulls blacker than the void around them. Elara's small fingers tightened around Adrian's coat. Seralyth's face remained calm, but her long ears angled sharply backward. "Take her," she said. "Leave now." Adrian looked at the child, then at the armed guards rushing toward the exits. "I came here to repair a shuttle." The princess lifted her head and smiled at him. "Now you have me." Adrian sighed and adjusted her weight in his arms. "Of course I do. That seems exactly like the kind of thing that happens when someone confiscates your spoon." By the time Adrian's transport reached Caliggo 7, the imperial capital had already become a pale memory behind 3 jump gates and a curtain of classified coordinates. The frontier moon was a quiet place, wrapped in silver forests, low mountains, and weather satellites that had not agreed with one another in nearly 30 years. One predicted sunshine. Another announced acid rain. The oldest simply displayed an apologetic face and advised residents to remain flexible. Adrian chose a small house outside the settlement, close enough to reach the repair docks but far enough that no curious neighbor could easily identify the child now sitting on his kitchen floor. Elara had removed her jeweled shoes, opened 3 cabinets, and arranged every metal spoon in a straight line. "What are you doing?" Adrian asked. "Counting your weapons. They're spoons." That is what the palace guard said. Adrian stared at her for several seconds, then decided the Empire had done more damage to the girl's education than he had first suspected. The first weeks were difficult. Elara woke from nightmares she could not explain, whispering about burning stars and a voice calling her from beneath a black ocean. She refused to sleep unless Adrian left the hallway light on. During the day, however, she attacked ordinary life with fearless curiosity. She learned how to open maintenance panels, how to bypass child locks, and how to make the household assistant repeat rude words by disguising them as emergency commands. The assistant, an outdated sphere named Bix, developed a nervous vibration whenever Elara entered the room. "Small royal person approaching," it announced one morning. "Securing fragile objects, private data, and remaining dignity." "I am not royal," Elara said. "You wear a crown to breakfast. It holds my hair. It has 6 diamonds. They hold it better." Adrian tried to create rules. Rule 1, no touching the reactor controls. Rule 2, no feeding the cleaning drone. Rule 3, no telling strangers that Adrian had been appointed by the Empress, because Adrian preferred not to be kidnapped before lunch. Elara accepted all 3 rules with solemn respect and broke 2 of them before sunset. She grew particularly fond of the repair docks, where Adrian worked on cargo skimmers, agricultural mechs, and ancient colony ships that made sounds no machine should make, while still claiming to be operational. The workers assumed Elara was an orphaned relative. Her long ears drew occasional glances, but Caliggo 7 had settlers from 40 species, and no one considered unusual ears worth delaying a meal over. One afternoon, Adrian found her beneath a damaged harvester, holding his plasma wrench. "Elara." "Yes?" "That tool can cut through armored steel." She looked at the machine above her. "Good. The bolt is stuck." "You are 6. The bolt does not know that." He took the wrench away and gave her a manual spanner instead. She frowned as if he had insulted her bloodline, but 10 minutes later she removed the bolt without help. Their life settled into a rhythm. Adrian repaired machines. Elara attended the settlement school under a false family name. At night they cooked meals that were sometimes edible and watched old Earth comedies translated badly into Valorian. Elara laughed hardest when the translation system misunderstood sarcasm and replaced jokes with military threats. Yet they were never truly alone. A delivery pilot appeared every few months with supplies Adrian had not ordered. A silent woman with silver eyes rented the house on the next ridge but never received visitors. Small surveillance drones occasionally crossed the forest, always vanishing when Adrian tried to scan them. He understood what they were: imperial protection. He also understood that protection existed only when danger did. The first attack came during winter. Adrian woke to the sound of Bix whispering beside his bed. "Unidentified life signs outside." "How many?" "4. Animals? Animals generally do not carry phase rifles. Adrian was out of bed before the sentence ended. The house lights died. Emergency strips glowed red along the floor. Somewhere down the corridor, Elara called his name. He reached her room just as the window dissolved in a flash of blue energy. Adrian threw himself forward, covering her with his body while molten fragments struck the wall. A dark figure climbed through the opening, its armor bending light around its shape. Before Adrian could move, Elara lifted one hand. The crystal pendant around her neck ignited. A wave of invisible force filled the room. The intruder flew backward through the broken window and vanished into the snow. Elara stared at her own fingers. "I did not do that." "I was hoping you did." Another impact shook the house. Bix rolled into the doorway, vibrating violently. "Good news," the assistant said. "The kitchen is unharmed." A second explosion followed. "Correction. The kitchen has achieved a more open design." Adrian pulled Elara toward the hidden maintenance tunnel beneath the house. As they descended, she looked back at the glowing pendant. "Why are they trying to hurt me?" He wanted to give her a comforting lie, but her long ears angled toward him, waiting. "I don't know," he said. "But your mother believed you were important." Elara gripped his hand. "Am I important to you?" Adrian stopped in the darkness. Above them, weapons fire rattled through the walls. He knelt and looked into her frightened eyes. "You are the reason I now own 7 emergency alarms, 3 fake identities, and a robot that insults me before breakfast." Bix's voice echoed from the tunnel entrance. "I insult everyone equally." Adrian smiled despite the danger. "Yes," he told Elara. "You are important to me." Her fingers tightened around his. Then, somewhere deep beneath the moon, something ancient answered the light of her pendant with a slow, powerful pulse. The pulse beneath Caliggo 7 came again before Adrian could lead Elara farther into the maintenance tunnel. It moved through the rock like the heartbeat of something too large to imagine, shaking dust from the ceiling and making the emergency lights flicker in perfect rhythm. Elara's pendant answered with a thin golden glow, and symbols began crawling across its surface like living handwriting. Bix rolled behind them, one side of his casing scorched. "I have analyzed the situation," he said. "And? We are underground, armed strangers are above us, and the moon appears to be waking up. That is not analysis. It is accurate complaining." Adrian kept moving. The tunnel had been built by the first colonists more than a century earlier and connected the house to an abandoned geothermal station beneath the forest. He had never repaired the deeper sections because the original maps ended at a wall labeled, "Do not open," which engineers universally understood to mean someone had already opened it and regretted the decision. Elara stayed close beside him. She was older now, tall enough that Adrian no longer had to carry her during emergencies, though part of him still expected to see the small child arranging spoons on the kitchen floor. Her golden hair had fallen loose around her shoulders, and her elegant long ears angled forward as she listened to sounds he could not hear. "There is a voice," she whispered. Adrian stopped. "What is it saying?" "I don't know. It isn't using words." "That is very inconsiderate." The tunnel trembled again. Behind them, metal screamed as the attackers forced open the entrance. Adrian pulled Elara toward the geothermal chamber. Old turbines stood in rows, their massive blades frozen beneath layers of mineral dust. At the far end waited the sealed wall from the maps, except it was no longer sealed. A narrow line of golden light had appeared down its center. Elara approached it. "No," Adrian said. The line widened. "That was a strong and well-timed no," Bix observed. "The wall appears unconvinced." The stone divided without sound, revealing a descending passage made of black material that reflected neither light nor heat. Adrian's scanner failed the moment he pointed it inside. "Unknown alloy," he muttered. Bix rotated his single optic. "Unknown architecture, unknown energy source, unknown probability of survival. Can you identify anything useful?" "Yes, I dislike it. Weapons fire echoed from the tunnel behind them. Adrian looked at Elara. The pendant was now shining brightly enough to illuminate her face. We go down, she said. You say that with alarming confidence. I dreamed about this place. That erased Adrian's last argument. They entered as the first armored figure appeared in the geothermal chamber. Blue energy struck the doorway, but the black walls absorbed it without leaving a mark. The passage sealed behind them, cutting off the attack and plunging them into silence. Then the floor lit beneath Elara's feet. Golden paths unfolded ahead, leading them deeper into the moon. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. At its center floated a broken ring nearly 50 meters wide, surrounded by thousands of dormant machines. Some resembled statues, others skeletal ships folded into impossible shapes. Along the walls, constellations burned in patterns Adrian did not recognize. Elara walked toward the ring. The machines awakened one by one. A figure formed above the platform, transparent and impossibly tall, with 4 arms and a face hidden behind a shifting veil of stars. Genetic line confirmed, it said in flawless Valorian. Imperial heir recognized. Adrian stepped in front of Elara. The figure turned toward him. Human guardian recognized. Adrian stared. I'm sorry, what? Pairing verified. Bix rolled forward. I am also present. The projection ignored him. Rude, Bix said. The ring began to rotate. Images appeared within it, fleets burning across unfamiliar systems, planets split open by weapons that bent gravity, entire civilizations disappearing beneath waves of black light. Elara covered her mouth. What is this? She asked. A probability, the projection replied. The final conflict. Adrian felt cold despite the warmth of the chamber. When? 17 standard years. Elara turned toward him. She was only 13. The projection shifted, showing another image. Elara, older, wearing the silver crown of the Empire. Adrian stood beside her, his hair gray, his face marked by exhaustion. Around them gathered representatives of species that currently considered one another enemies. The heir must be shaped beyond imperial doctrine, the projection said. Power raised by power repeats power. Only an outsider could teach the future ruler to value lives beyond bloodline, species, and throne. Adrian finally understood why Seralyth had chosen him, and the knowledge frightened him more than the assassins above. She gave me her daughter because of this? She gave you the galaxy. Bix made a soft mechanical sound. That seems excessive. He struggles with household budgeting. Adrian barely heard him. He looked at Elara, expecting fear. Instead, she studied the vision with a stillness that reminded him painfully of her mother. Can this war be prevented? She asked. The projection faced her. Yes. How? The images vanished. By becoming the ruler no empire would choose. The chamber shook. A crack of blue light tore across the sealed entrance. Their attackers were breaking through. Adrian tightened his grip on the plasma wrench. Elara looked at him. What do we do? He glanced at the ancient machines surrounding them, then at Bix, who was attempting to access a control panel by repeatedly bumping into it. We survive, Adrian said. Then we find out why every ancient civilization hides its important instructions under a moon. Bix's optic brightened. Perhaps rent is lower. The first dormant machine opened its eyes. The ancient machine rose from its cradle with a sound like mountains grinding beneath an ocean. Dust rolled from its black armor as 6 narrow limbs unfolded, each ending in tools that might once have repaired stars or dismantled armies. A single golden eye opened in the center of its head and fixed upon Elara. Adrian stepped in front of her. The machine tilted its head. Protective obstruction detected. I prefer parental concern. Obstruction classification unchanged. Behind them, blue light continued cutting through the sealed entrance. Their attackers had nearly breached the chamber. Elara touched Adrian's arm. It isn't going to hurt us. You said that about the cleaning drone. It only attacked your trousers. It had a rotating blade. It was removing a stain. The stain was still attached to me. The machine extended one limb toward Elara. Her pendant rose from her chest as if pulled by invisible gravity. Golden symbols spread through the chamber, racing across walls and awakening the dormant mechanisms one after another. The tall projection appeared again. Guardian trial initiated. Adrian's stomach tightened. I dislike the word trial. Bix rolled beside him. You also dislike mornings, formal clothing, and vegetables shaped like stars. They are suspiciously cheerful. The floor vanished. For one breathless instant, Adrian felt himself falling. Then his boots struck polished metal. The ancient chamber had been replaced by the bridge of an imperial warship. Beyond its transparent viewport, thousands of vessels burned against a red sun. Elara stood beside a command throne, older now, dressed in silver armor. Blood marked one side of her face. Adrian understood immediately. This was not the present. It was another possible future. A fleet officer appeared before Elara. Your Majesty, the enemy refugees are blocking our firing path. If we delay, their weapon will reach the capital. How many refugees? Elara asked. 4 million. And if we fire? They die. The Empire survives. Elara looked toward Adrian, but he could not speak. His body had become part of the vision, unable to move or interfere. The officer waited. The scene froze. The projection's voice filled the bridge. Imperial doctrine selects sacrifice. Human instruction may select uncertainty. Which choice creates the ruler required? The vision dissolved. Adrian found himself back in the chamber, breathing hard. Elara stood pale and silent beside him. That was cruel, he said. Cruelty is irrelevant, the projection replied. Preparation is necessary. No, preparation without compassion is just fear wearing a uniform. The golden eye of the machine narrowed. Statement recorded. The sealed entrance exploded inward. 4 armored figures entered through the smoke, phase rifles raised. Their suits bent light around them, revealing only distorted silhouettes. One pointed at Elara. Take the air alive. Eliminate the human. Adrian lifted his plasma wrench. Bix rotated toward him. That is a repair tool. Today it repairs attitudes. The attackers fired. The ancient machine moved faster than sight. Its limbs swept through the air, catching the energy bolts and twisting them into bright rings that spun harmlessly around its body. A second machine awakened near the wall, then a third. Their golden eyes opened in unison. The intruders hesitated. Bix rolled forward. I believe this is the traditional moment for reconsidering poor decisions. One attacker threw a gravity charge. Elara raised her hand. The charge stopped in midair. Her pendant burned against her chest and the ancient ring behind her accelerated. Space folded across the chamber. The charge disappeared and reappeared above the attackers, trapped inside a sphere of frozen time. Elara stared at it. I did that. Adrian gripped her shoulder. Excellent. Never do it near the kitchen. The machines advanced. The attackers retreated, but the broken entrance sealed behind them. Their light-bending armor failed under the golden pulse, revealing pale figures with narrow faces and dark metallic markings embedded in their skin. Elara's long ears angled sharply forward. They're Valorian. One of them removed his helmet. We serve the Empire, he said. No, Adrian replied. You serve someone inside it. The assassin smiled. The throne will not belong to a child raised by a human. Before Adrian could answer, the machine struck the floor. A wave of force pinned all 4 attackers to their knees. Threat contained, it announced. The projection turned toward Elara. Return to the capital. Adrian looked at it. That seems unwise. The Empire is dividing. Concealment has reached failure. Elara studied the captured assassins, and something changed in her expression. The frightened child Adrian had carried through a burning palace was still there, but behind her eyes stood the beginning of someone stronger. When we go back, she said, They will try to control me. Yes, Adrian answered. They will tell me who I am. Constantly. They will probably give speeches. Very long ones. Bix released a mournful tone. I recommend surrender. Elara almost smiled. Then she looked toward the vision of the capital forming inside the ancient ring. I want to see my mother. Adrian stared at the distant palace, knowing that every noble, general, and hidden enemy would soon learn the lost princess was alive. He rested the plasma wrench across his shoulder. Then we go home. Bix rolled after them. Should I prepare diplomatic protocols? No. Emergency protocols? Yes. Kitchen protocols? Adrian glanced at the scorched edge of his coat. Especially those. The imperial capital had changed during Elara's absence, though Adrian suspected capitals always did that when ordinary people were not looking. New defense towers circled the planet like silver thorns, surveillance satellites filled the upper atmosphere, and enormous holographic portraits of Empress Seralyth watched every transport entering orbit. Beneath one portrait glowed the words "Unity through obedience," which Adrian considered a remarkably efficient way to make obedience sound unpleasant. Their ship emerged from folded space under escort by 12 imperial cruisers. Bix examined the tactical display. We are surrounded. They're protecting us, Elara said. Protection and imprisonment use similar formations. Adrian looked at the moon-sized palace station ahead. He has a point. Elara stood beside the viewport in a plain gray coat, refusing the ceremonial garments sent by the court. At 13, she had grown into the beginning of the woman shown by the ancient vision. Her golden hair fell over her shoulders, framing the elegant long ears that marked her bloodline more clearly than any crown. Yet when she nervously twisted the pendant around her neck, Adrian still saw the little girl who had once counted spoons as weapons. The docking bay was crowded with soldiers, ministers, and nobles wearing enough jewels to purchase Caliggo 7 twice. At their center stood Empress Seralyth. For the first time since Adrian had known her, the Empress did not look untouchable. She looked like a mother who had waited too long. Elara walked down the ramp slowly. Seralyth remained still until only a few steps separated them. Then imperial dignity broke. She crossed the distance and pulled her daughter into her arms. No one spoke. Even Bix lowered his volume. Elara held her mother tightly, but when they separated, pain sharpened her voice. Why didn't you tell me? Seralyth's gaze moved to the pendant. Because knowledge would have placed you in greater danger. I was attacked without knowledge. Yes. I dreamed of worlds burning. I know. You gave me away. The Empress flinched. Adrian had seen Seralyth face armed fleets without blinking. That single sentence wounded her more deeply than any weapon could have. I entrusted you, she said quietly, to the only person the prophecy accepted. Adrian stepped forward. We need the entire truth. Several ministers objected at once. Seralyth silenced them with a glance. Take us below, she ordered. They descended through the palace in a sealed gravitic lift, passing beyond the public chambers, military levels, and ancient foundations. The lift finally opened inside a cavern where a black arch stood embedded in the rock. Its surface resembled the material beneath Caliggo 7. The pendant ignited. The arch opened. Beyond it waited an archive older than the empire itself. Transparent spheres floated over a circular platform, each containing preserved memories from civilizations long extinct. When Elara entered, thousands of voices whispered through the chamber. A holographic star map appeared. Red fractures spread across it, dividing the galaxy into 7 military alliances. Seralyth approached the display. 43 years ago, our explorers discovered this archive. Most records were damaged, but one prediction remained intact. The stars darkened. Images of war filled the air, suns collapsing, fleets vanishing inside artificial singularities, inhabited planets erased by weapons that severed space from time. The conflict begins with the assassination of a ruler, Seralyth continued. Retaliation follows. Within 9 months, every major civilization enters the war. Within 4 years, nothing remains capable of rebuilding. Elara stared at the destruction. And I stop it? You may. A new image formed. An infant Elara surrounded by branching paths of light. In nearly every future, she became a powerful empress, and failed. Only one path remained golden. It showed Adrian holding her hand. The archive studied millions of possible guardians, Seralyth said. Generals raised conquerors. Scholars raised rulers trapped by logic. Nobles raised heirs who valued bloodline above life. Only a human outsider produced the necessary result. Adrian folded his arms. Why me? Earth has billions of humans. The archive answered before Seralyth could. A voice emerged from every sphere. Because he entered danger without command. Because he protected the heir before understanding her value. Because he possesses no desire for power. Bix rolled forward. He also possesses no savings. Thank you, Bix. Accuracy remains my highest function. The golden future expanded. Elara stood among hostile rulers, not commanding them, but listening. The image showed her preventing a battle by opening imperial borders to enemy refugees. It showed her dismantling weapons rather than claiming them. It showed Adrian beside her, older and tired, still carrying the same battered wrench. Elara's eyes filled with tears. My whole life was planned. No, Adrian said. The archive dimmed as he stepped between her and the vision. A path was predicted. That isn't the same as choosing it. Seralyth watched him carefully. Adrian continued. You are not important because a machine says you will save the galaxy. You are important because you care whether it deserves saving. Elara looked at her mother. Did you believe the prophecy? Seralyth's long ears lowered slightly. I believed the danger. I hoped the prophecy was wrong. Then why give me to him? The Empress glanced at Adrian. Because when the shuttle burned, every trained guard waited for orders. He went inside. A warning tone cut through the chamber. The star map changed. One red fracture began spreading faster than the others. A border fleet had opened fire in the Theron passage. Casualties appeared by the thousands. Seralyth's face hardened. It has begun early. A minister's voice came through the communicator. Majesty, the War Council is assembled. They demand immediate retaliation. Elara looked at the burning systems, then at the golden path narrowing before her. Adrian rested a hand on her shoulder. No pressure, he said. It's only the future of civilization. Bix emitted a soft chime. Would this be a poor time to mention that our parking permit expires in 11 minutes? Elara laughed once through her fear. Then she turned toward the lift. Let the council wait. Seralyth raised an eyebrow. For what? Elara looked at the archive of extinct worlds, for someone to finally ask why the shooting started. The War Council had already begun arguing before Elara entered the chamber, which Adrian considered an impressive achievement, because none of them seemed interested in hearing one another. 12 admirals stood around a circular tactical table, each surrounded by rotating fleet projections and casualty reports. Red light washed across their faces as the Theron passage burned above the table like a wound in space. We must strike before they reinforce the corridor, Admiral Kalis said. And turn one border battle into a galactic war? Elara asked. Every voice stopped. She crossed the chamber with Adrian, Seralyth, and Bix behind her. The admirals looked at her simple coat, then at Adrian's worn boots, as though the future of the Empire had arrived improperly dressed. Lord Varen stood near the table. He had aged since the day Elara left the palace, but his disapproval remained remarkably healthy. The princess has no authority here. Seralyth took her place beside the tactical display. She has mine. That is not reassuring, Bix whispered. Adrian nudged him with one boot. Elara studied the battlefield data. 2 Valorian cruisers had been destroyed, but the enemy fleet had not advanced. Instead, their ships remained clustered around a damaged moon. "They aren't attacking the passage," she said. Kalis frowned. "They fired first." "Why are their vessels facing inward?" The tactical map enlarged. Thousands of small signals moved beneath the enemy formation. "Civilian transports," Adrian said. A communications officer checked the readings. "Refugee ships, nearly 80,000. Elara looked at the burning moon. "They're protecting an evacuation." Varen's expression hardened. "Or hiding an invasion force. Then why send unarmed ships into a minefield?" The room fell quiet. A transmission arrived from the enemy flagship, heavily distorted by interference. The officer played it. A desperate voice repeated the same phrase in an unfamiliar language. Bix's optic brightened. Translation available. Everyone turned toward him. "You understand it?" Elara asked. "I have spent 13 years listening to Adrian repair machines while using vocabulary forbidden in 40 systems. Linguistic adaptation became necessary." "Translate." The message cleared. "Medical containment has failed. Do not approach. We are evacuating children." The council chamber changed. The admirals still stood upright, but certainty drained from their faces. A plague had spread across the moon, engineered to attack multiple species by rewriting cellular memory. The first Valorian ships had mistaken the evacuation fleet's quarantine field for a weapons lock and opened fire. Elara faced her mother. "Order our fleet to stop." Seralyth did not hesitate. Kalis did. "Majesty, lowering defenses may expose the capital route." "Then keep the defenses," Elara said. "Open a humanitarian corridor." "To an enemy civilization?" "To children." The command went out. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then Valorian cruisers moved apart, forming a path through the minefield. Medical drones launched from the imperial carriers, projecting containment shields around the refugee transports. The first step toward peace lasted exactly 47 seconds. Then space tore open. A black vessel emerged between both fleets, shaped like a blade driven through reality. Its hull carried no markings. Rings of dark energy formed around it, bending nearby starlight into spirals. The archive's prophecy flashed across the tactical table. "Unknown war platform detected." The vessel fired. A beam crossed the passage without sound. One Valorian cruiser and 2 refugee ships vanished, not exploding, but erased so completely that even their debris disappeared. Panic consumed both fleets. "They want us to blame each other," Elara said. The black vessel fired again. Adrian leaned over the tactical table, studying the energy pattern. "That weapon folds space before discharge." Kalis stared at him. "You are a mechanic." "Yes. Machines become less mysterious when important people stop naming them after gods." He enlarged the vessel's drive signature. The firing rings drew power from the same fold space engine that held the ship in reality. "If we disrupt the engine while it charges, the weapon should collapse inward." "Should?" Bix asked. Adrian looked at him. "Would you prefer a confident lie?" "I receive those from government systems already." The Imperial fleet could not target the drive through the vessel's distortion field. Elara watched the refugee ships scatter, trapped between the unknown attacker and the mines. Then she saw the ancient ring inside her pendant begin to glow. A path appeared across the tactical display, leading directly through folded space. "The machine beneath Caliggo 7 opened passages," she said. "The pendant remembers how." Seralyth understood first. "You intend to board that vessel." "I intend to stop it." "You are 13. And it is killing people now." Adrian closed his eyes briefly. "I miss the days when her worst idea involved a plasma wrench." Elara looked at him. "You gave me the wrench. I was young and irresponsible. You were 37. Tragically young." The pendant projected a golden doorway in the center of the chamber. Beyond it lay a corridor of black metal, pulsing with hostile energy. Seralyth seized Elara's arm. For a moment she was not an empress, only a mother facing the same impossible choice again. I already gave you away once. Elara embraced her. You gave me someone who taught me not to walk past people in danger. Adrian picked up his battered wrench. Bix rolled toward the portal. I assume I am also joining this suicidal mission? No, Adrian said. You stay here. Bix paused. Then he rolled through first. I have rejected your command due to its lack of intelligence. Adrian sighed and followed. Elara stepped into the golden doorway last, carrying no crown and commanding no army, while behind her 2 enemy fleets stopped firing long enough to watch a human-raised princess walk into the weapon designed to begin the end of the galaxy. The corridor inside the black vessel twisted around them as though the ship had been built by something that considered straight lines and unnecessary kindness. Adrian followed Elara through walls that breathed with dark energy, while Bix rolled ahead, complaining each time the floor changed direction beneath him. This architecture is hostile to wheels, he declared as the corridor tilted sideways. At last, Adrian said, gripping a ribbed support. We have identified the true villain. Behind them, the golden doorway collapsed, cutting them off from the fleets. Elara's pendant continued to shine, projecting a thin path through the shifting darkness. With every step, whispers entered her mind, promises of victory, visions of herself crowned over obedient worlds, images of enemies kneeling before her. The ship was testing her, offering the kind of power imperial rulers had desired for centuries. She stopped before a chamber filled with floating black mirrors. In each reflection she appeared older, armored, feared. You can end every war, a voice said from everywhere. Rule every species. Remove their freedom to choose violence. Adrian watched her face tighten. Years ago, she might have looked to him for an answer. Now she lifted her chin and spoke for herself. Peace without choice is only a quiet prison. The mirrors shattered. The path opened. They entered the vessel's core, where a sphere of folded space hung above a circular platform, consuming light and feeding power into the weapon outside. Around it stood dozens of figures wearing the same metallic markings as the assassins from Caliggo 7. At their center waited Lord Varen. Elara stared at the former commander. You ordered the attacks. I protected the Empire, he replied. The prophecy threatened everything our people built. A ruler raised by a human would surrender our superiority. Adrian raised his wrench. You crossed several star systems to complain about parenting? Varen's expression hardened. You made her weak. He taught me strength without cruelty, Elara said. That is why you feared him. Varen activated the core. The sphere expanded, and beyond the vessel's hull both fleets appeared suspended inside a widening distortion. The weapon would erase them together and leave each civilization blaming the other. Elara ran toward the control platform, but Varen's guards opened fire. Adrian pulled her behind a pillar while Bix launched himself into a data port with a metallic crash. I have entered the enemy network, the robot announced. It is poorly organized and uses an insulting number of passwords containing the word destiny. Adrian threw his plasma wrench. It struck a guard's rifle, overloaded the weapon, and sent a burst of electricity across the platform. Elara reached the core controls, but the ancient symbols shifted too quickly to understand. Her pendant rose, casting the image of the black ring beneath Caliggo 7. The prophecy had never promised she would destroy the weapon. It had shown her uniting those who feared one another. She opened a channel to both fleets. This ship caused the attack. Its core cannot be stopped from inside by one system. I need both fleets to fire together at the coordinates I am sending. Suspicion filled the silence. Then the refugee commander answered first. We will trust you. Admiral Kalis followed. Imperial fleet aligned. Varen lunged toward Elara. Adrian intercepted him, and they struck the floor together. Varen was stronger, armored and trained, but Adrian had spent 13 years repairing machines in impossible spaces while a royal child asked questions beside him. He knew where systems failed under pressure. He drove a broken control rod into the seam of Varen's armor, locking the suit rigid. "Mechanic," Varen snarled. "Exactly." Outside, the two fleets fired as one. The core folded inward. Darkness rushed through the chamber, swallowing the platform, the guards, and every sound except Elara shouting Adrian's name. Her pendant flared with golden light and opened one final passage. She seized Adrian's hand. Bix detached from the network a moment too late and flew after them, yelling, "I object to dramatic exits without ramps." They fell through the doorway and landed in the Imperial Council chamber, as the portal vanished behind them. For several seconds, no one moved. Then Seralyth crossed the room and embraced her daughter. Reports arrived moments later. The black vessel had collapsed, Varen's surviving conspirators had been arrested, and the refugee fleet had reached safety through the humanitarian corridor. The war predicted by the archive had ended before it truly began. Years later, when Elara took the imperial throne, representatives from former enemy civilizations stood beside Valorian citizens during her coronation. She abolished the laws that ranked species by bloodline, transformed the ancient archive into a shared galactic council, and made compassion a requirement of leadership rather than a weakness to hide. Seralyth watched proudly from the first row. Adrian stood near the throne in an uncomfortable formal coat, older now, his hair touched with gray. Elara descended the steps before the crown was placed upon her head and embraced him in front of the entire galaxy. "You raised the ruler no empire would have chosen," she whispered. Adrian smiled. "You raised yourself. I mostly prevented you from dismantling reactors." Bix, newly polished and still equally rude, announced from beside them, "Historical records indicate he failed twice." Laughter spread through the hall, including from Elara. When the crown finally rested upon her golden hair between her elegant long ears, she did not look like the weapon of an ancient prophecy. She looked like the child of two worlds, shaped by an empress who had sacrificed her heart and a human who had never desired power. And far from the palace, in a small house on Caliggo 7, the weather satellites continued disagreeing, while Adrian's old kitchen robot finally completed a meal without exploding. No one was present to witness the achievement, which was unfortunate, because Adrian would later insist it was the second greatest miracle in galactic history.